Tonight we're doing Parashat Bo, the weekly Parasha, lessons to be learned of the Parasha. As you know, in Parashat Vayera and Shemot, there's an account of the Makot, the 10 plagues. Am Yisrael is beginning the process of redemption. They've gone down to Egypt. They went through many years of bondage and servitude, and now they are in the process of being redeemed. Part of this process involves Makot. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings about 10 plagues, and one of the ideas behind the plagues is Midah Keneged Midah. It is a punishment to those Goyim who acted in the way they acted against other human beings. Yesh Din v'Yesh Dayan, we're taught, even though we do not always see the hand of Hashem openly and clearly. Nevertheless, we are told that Yesh Din v'Yesh Dayan, there is a judge and there is judgment, that nobody gets away with it, even though it may appear to us in the short term. But in the long term, Hashem takes care of everything. The Makot, the 10 plagues that came on Egypt, were not just intended for the Egyptians. Rabbis tell us that everything that happens in the world, regardless of the size of a calamity, regardless of where it occurs, in the far ends of the world, Akol B'Shvil Yisrael. Everything in the end has something to do with Am Yisrael, with the Jewish nation, and it is also intended for us. So the Makot, even though they were a punishment of sorts to the Egyptians, they were also intended for Am Yisrael. As we see in Parashat Bo, Hashem says clearly that I bring these Makot leman tesaper b'oznei bincha u'bincha et asher italalti b'Mitzrayim, in order that you recount what has transpired, what occurred in Egypt to your children and to your children's children. They should be aware of what has happened. So the purpose of these Makot, as far as Am Yisrael is concerned, is that we become impressed that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is still in charge. He's still around and He still controls everything. And this is something necessary for Am Yisrael's emunah, for our faith to be continuously strengthened. As time goes by, we don't have a Matan Torah, we don't see the presence of Hashem coming out and speaking to us every day. In order for us to continue to be strong in our ways and faithful in the fulfillment of the Torah mitzvot, we need to continuously be strong in our emunah. So these stories help to strengthen our emunah. The traditions that we have, the holidays that we celebrate, even though they've occurred, the events that we're celebrating occurred so long ago, nevertheless, part of the mitzvah is in order to inspire future generations that HaKadosh Baruch Hu performed what He did back then, that He will do so again in the future. That He does so all the time, but we don't always see it. This is a very important idea, the inspiration of future generations at this junction. Am Yisrael is about to leave Mitzrayim. Where to? On their way to Kabbalat Torah, to receive the Torah and the mitzvot. So right before they go on this journey, right before they receive the Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives them something that they need prior to the receiving of Torah mitzvot. And what is that? Yirat Shamayim. In order for emunah to flourish, in order for emunah to be strongly rooted, faith, it has to be on a foundation, on a basis of Yirat Shamayim, fear of heaven. And by performing these great miracles, that even the Egyptians at the very end were already convinced that this is not witchcraft, that this is the hand of God, this was a way to prepare them with Yirat Shamayim, a very important foundation. As Shlomo Melech tells us in Mishlei, Reshit Chochmah Yirat Hashem. The beginning of all wisdom is Yirat Hashem, the fear of heaven. In order for one to have this wisdom, in order for that wisdom to have an impact in one's life, in order for that wisdom to make any sense, it has to be accompanied first by Yirat Shamayim. That is the basis, that is the foundation of everything. If one does not fear Hashem, then all the Chokhmah is worthless. You can learn all sorts of things in the world. You can learn religion too. You can learn Gemara as a profession, as just in any other topic. But if it's not accompanied with Yirat Shamayim, then it will not have too much of an impact. Yirat Shamayim, therefore, is number one. Before the Chokhmah, before we receive the Torah mitzvot, Am Yisrael has to be impressed, has to be strong enough in that emunah. In order for that emunah to be strong, it has to be accompanied with Yirat Shamayim. And that is why we see in Parashat Beshalach, it says, Vayiru ha'am et Adonai, and only after that, Vayaminu b'Adonai Moshe Avdo. First they feared, and only then, after that, they began to truly believe and rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. One of the big questions of this week's parasha, however, is okay, Am Yisrael is very impressed, and they are commanded to impress upon their children to do the same. But there is a group of Jews who are not so impressed. Rabbis tell us in the Midrash that not every Jew left Egypt. There were some Reshaim, they were wicked. They were not just simple Jews. They were wicked. They did not want to leave. They wanted to remain behind. What happened to all these Jews who wanted to remain behind and did not want to join everybody else? They died. When did they die? In the Makat Hoshech, in the plague of darkness. Plague number 9. Why did they die during the Makat Hoshech? So the simple explanation given is so that the Egyptians should not be aware that Jews are dying too. Because then they would say, oh, it's not only us, it's them too. That's the simple explanation why this group of people died in Makat Hoshech. But the other explanation is as follows. Hashem in reality gives many opportunities, many chances for people to come to their senses. Perhaps in the very beginning they had their doubts. One has to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they didn't believe Moshe. He's making up a story. Maybe he's a magician, performing all these feats. But after 8 makot, they were able to see the hand of Hashem. They were able to be impressed. Right? So no one can say after that point that Moshe is making up a story. Nobody can say that Moshe made up this story on his own. They were given 8 chances. So perhaps that is an additional idea of why Hashem is waiting until Makat Hoshech and not before. Only after 8 Makot they do not change their mind, that is when they are killed. But we still have to understand why didn't they want to leave? I mean, that's the biggest question. It's very difficult to understand how a Jew can see so much, can experience so much, and still be stubborn and still not want to go out. After all, hopefully they will be going to someplace better. They will not be slaves in Egypt. So what's holding them back? So the rabbis tell us that we must not forget what these people went through. Where were they? Not necessarily all of them, but a good number of them were in Mem Tet Sharet Tumah. They were in one of the lowest level of impurity. There are 50 levels of impurity. And they were in level number 49. And what's that level? 49? Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah perhaps even begins earlier levels, but that level is a tremendous level of impurity which comes from Avodah Zarah, idol worshipping. Now this power of Avodah Zarah, the power of the Tum'ah that comes from Avodah Zarah is very, very powerful. It's so powerful that in the Kabbalah it is mentioned that it actually shackles you. It actually ties you down. Doesn't let go of you so easily. You're so engrossed in it that it's hard to leave. You're drowning. It's like someone drowning, and imagine somebody coming out to save him. Have you ever heard what happens to the one trying to save one who is drowning? He may end up drowning himself. Why? Because the one who is struggling doesn't let the guy who's saving him do his job. He's panicking in a sense, struggling, and sometimes you have to be very careful because you may drown yourself, Chas v'shalom. You have to be a real professional. You have to know what you're doing, how to go about saving someone who's drowning. So this individual who is deeply in the Avodah Zarah, it's like he's drowning. He's not allowing anyone to approach him because he's like tied down with chains. This Tum'ah of Avodah Zarah is also described as Choshech, as darkness. And perhaps that's also another connection of why they died during Makat Choshech. They were themselves in a Makat Choshech of sorts. They were themselves in darkness. And when one is in darkness, he does not always see the light at the end of the tunnel. But there is light. If you would allow yourself to go out a little bit, you would see the light. Otherwise, all you see is darkness around it, and you don't see that there's anything better and any reason to leave wherever you are right now. But the next question is, well, we did see some who did go out, who did want to go out, and they were also in the Tumah of the Avodah Zarah, and others who didn't. What makes some want to go out and others not to go out? They were almost all in the same Avodah Zarah, in the same Tumah. In order to answer this question, we have to understand how Avodah Zarah works. What is Avodah Zarah? How come somebody is attracted to idol worshipping? Today we can't really fully understand the magnitude of the interest that people had, the attraction, worshipping idols. Do they really do anything? Do they have any power? Yes, they do. Otherwise the Torah would not forbid them, and people would not have been so crazy to be attracted to them. Once upon a time, not only did they have the power, but there was also a yetzer hara. There was also an inclination, a desire, an interest in these kind of things. People were really attracted. The best of people were attracted to it. Today we don't have that desire anymore. The power is still there. Their interest is still there, but no longer the desire. And what is this Avodah Zarah? What does it do? Why are people interested? Simply stated, what Avodah Zarah is a system of actions and behaviorism that one erects for himself to suit his personal desires. In other words, an individual has his personal desires, and he therefore has to set up this religion or these beliefs in order to accommodate his personal desires. That is what Avodah Zarah. In order to allow an individual to basically do anything he wants, he sets up a system that he creates, and he relates it to some power out there. But that is exactly the opposite of Avodat Hashem. The service of Hashem is that Hashem's will comes first, and I do whatever He wishes, not what I want. That is the big difference between Avodah Zarah and Avodat Hashem. In Avodah Zarah, the focus is on the individual. He has a certain agenda. He has certain personal desires. He wants them very, very much. So he creates this system, this religion around his life. Oved Hashem is more interested in what Hashem has to say, what Hashem wants of him, not what he wants. So when someone has this personal desires that he's so much after, it gives him a very difficult time in seeing any light. Because this is what he wants. He's not interested in anything else. That is just a little bit of a description of the power of Avodah Zarah, how it holds someone down because he has his own personal agenda. It's like they say, I've already made up my mind, don't confuse me with the fact, right? He's already made up his mind. He already knows what he wants. He has personal agenda here. Therefore, he does not want to be introduced to anything else. And therefore, does not search for the light. Does not search for anything else. He thinks that's all there is. This dark, yeah.
You don't have a Yetzer Hara or Avodah Zarah anymore, but yet you also said that today's Avodah Zarah is the worship of money.
I'm going to get to that. Okay, so that is the difference between one who's Oved Hashem, one who's Oved Avodah Zarah. Very big difference. Is one prepared to do what Hashem asks of him, or does one have a personal agenda? And therefore has to justify all his actions by creating a system of beliefs and behaviorisms that he ascribes to. Now, according to the Kabbalah, that is one of the reasons why Hashem brought the 10 Makot in Egypt. The 10 Makot represent the 10 Sefirot, the 10 emanations of Hashem, according to the Kabbalah. Hashem brought all the emanations, all the Sefirot, all the Makot, to weaken the connection that the Jews may have had to that Avodah Zarah. In order to loosen them from that very heavy connection, Hashem brought all His forces, all the Sefirot, to knock down that Tumah. But not everybody came out. Still, after everything was said and done, there were still many, many Jews who did not want to leave. So we need to understand what is really necessary. What's the very first step in order for one to want to leave the darkness where he's in? What does he have to have? What's the very first step? The very first step is called Hachna'ah. Hachna'ah is not just plain humbleness. That's called Anava. Anava is humbleness, but they're very similar. Hachna'ah means that you have to be willing to subject yourself to a higher authority. That's called Hachna'ah. And in order to be able to leave this darkness, you have to be ready for that, for Hachna'ah. In other words, you're not just focused on yourself, you actually you're prepared to subscribe yourself or to subject yourself to a higher authority. That's called Hachna'ah. Now, in order to acquire this Hachna'ah, let's call it this humbleness, one has to be very, very careful not to subscribe any power to anything in the world except to Hashem. Nothing else has any power in the world except for Hashem. Hashem is Echad, Ushmor Echad. That's a very important part of our faith. When we say He's one, and His name is one, we're saying a lot. One of the things we're saying, one of the statements is that He's the only power. There is no other power equivalent to Him. And all the powers that exist in the world come from Him. They don't have power whatsoever without Hashem giving them power. There's no other independent power. So one has to believe very, very strongly that Hashem is the only power and there's nothing else. And one who does not subject himself continuously to that idea that Hashem is the only one runs the risk of his emunah becoming weak with time. What I just said is that it is possible for a human being with time to really think that there are other forces out there in the world. Therefore, this emunah that we have, that Hashem is one, needs to be continuously in our mind, that there is nothing else but Him. A lot of people do not advance too much in Avodat Hashem. They do not get ahead. They do not progress too much. They do not grow in the service of Hashem. They do not take upon themselves more mitzvot. For this reason, because they are not completely convinced that Hashem is the only power. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. What you just asked. There are people out there who really think that money talks. That's where the expression comes from. Money is the power. If you made money, you've made it, they said. That is, unfortunately, a problem that affects many observant Jews. Money has become an idol. They actually believe that money has a koach, has power. And if you believe that something other than Hashem has a koach, that's avodah zarah. It's exactly the same thing. It's a golden calf. And a lot of people really believe that if I only had the money, I could do this. It takes money, they say. Yes, of course it takes money to do many things. But we can't give the money too much credit. It is not a koach as many people make it sound like it is. I don't care how much money you have, but an individual may be here today, tomorrow he may be 6 feet under. All the money in the world, all the billions of dollars in the world will not be able to hold him back 1 minute if Hashem wants to take away his breath. So what good is all the money? But people lose themselves sometimes into thinking that money can save them. Money can accomplish many things for them. And it's not true. And unfortunately, many people treat it as an avodah zarah. And that is why they do not progress. How don't they progress? They don't have bitachon b'Hashem. They don't have complete reliance in Hashem. And emunah without bitachon is incomplete. Emunah means to believe in Hashem, to know Hashem exists, that He created the world, but it's something else completely, to rely on Him, to trust in Him, and only in Him. You have a lot of observant Jews who do not have complete bitachon. They are concerned when they have problems. They don't understand why they're suffering, why they are ill. All of that requires bitachon, that everything is for the good, that there is a reason for everything, that there is no coincidence. All of these ideas and concepts come from having full bitachon in Hashem. And one who does not have this bitachon is missing a lot. And the only way he can strengthen that bitachon is by having complete trust only in Hashem and not in any other kohort. This is a big problem today. It was always a big problem that people ascribe a certain koach, a certain power to all sorts of things out there, all sorts of idols. And very, very soon, Hashem will destroy all these isms, socialism, communism, all these things, all these systems, whatever you want to call them, that people very much put their faith in. He will destroy it. And unfortunately, even the economy is at risk, because people have put too much of their trust in these powers, in the power of the stock exchange, in the power of gold, in the power of oil, in the commodities. So all of these will be shattered. I don't want to scare you, but do not put too much of your faith in anything, not even in the banks, because we don't know what will happen tomorrow. It could be that the dollar will be worthless, not even the value of the piece of paper it was printed on. It's very, very possible. I didn't say for sure that will happen, but it's very possible. If there's major catastrophes, major disasters, and the economy collapses, anything is possible. And before Mashiach comes, we are told that there are going to be big earthquakes, not just physical earthquakes, the earth moving, but many of the things we thought were powerful, were strong, will be shattered. We will see that they're worthless. They were just in our imagination, but in reality they had no power of their own. HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows Paro to live until the very last Makkah. Hashem wants you to see all the Makkot. What for? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to humble Paro. What does it mean to humble Paro? When you let my people go, I don't want you to let them go because you suffer so much that you can't take it anymore. I want you to let them go because you recognize that this is the hand of Hashem, that I commanded you. A person can easily give up. I can't take the torture. But this is not what Hashem wants. What Hashem wants of Paro to see everything and to realize himself and to admit Hashem at-Tzaddik, Hashem is right. And that is why Hashem holds Paro until the very, very end. One who is humble, one who is nichna, we said before, he's able to go to the next step of having true Yirat Shamayim, fear of heaven. And as a result of that, he's able to conduct his entire life according to what Hashem expects of him. As Shlomo HaMelech tells us, Ashrei Adam Mefahed Tamid. Fortunate is the person who's always concerned. I'd rather use the word concerned than scared, which is what the word pachad means. Always concerned about his ma'asim. He always analyzes and scrutinizes his actions. Would Hashem be happy with this? Is this correct? What does Hashem expect of me? Ashrei Adam mefachet tamid. And what is the opposite of Ashrei Adam mefachet tamid? Umakse libo yipol bera'ah. And whoever is stubborn and is not God-fearing and does not follow what Hashem wants of him, in the end, yipol bera'ah. In the end, he will have a downfall. And all of us may know someone just like that, who always thought that he was right and always thought that he does not need Hashem in his life. And in the end, he fell. And he fell very, very hard. That is what Shlomo Melech predicts. Asher Adam mefachet tamid. Fortune is the person who is concerned. Maybe the wealth will not be around tomorrow. Just because he's doing well now, who knows what will be tomorrow. I can't give up my tefillah. People, unfortunately, who came to this country at the turn of the century, many of them threw their tefillin overboard. The women removed their wigs and threw it over the ship. We don't need this in America. What happened? This was good for you in Europe and it's not good enough for you anymore? No, we don't need this in America. In America, everything is mutar. Everything is okay. Unfortunately. Umaksheh libo, one who is stubborn, who does not allow Yirat Hashem to guide him, yipol bera'ah, in the end he will fall. That is what the Navi in the Haftarah of this week's Parashat says, Al tira ve'al tehat. Don't be afraid. Telling the Jewish people, you have no reason to be afraid of the Goyim. Because if one is a true Yireh Hashem, if one is true God-fearing, he has no reason to fear anyone else. Those who do not have Yirat Hashem, then they have reason to fear. They fear the police, they fear the IRS, they fear all sorts of things. One who's true Yireh Hashem has no reason to fear anyone or anybody. We spoke about the importance of Achna'ah being the very first step. We mentioned that Achna'ah is the very important first step that one needs in order to progress in Avodat Hashem, in order to be God-fearing. One of the things that holds one back from being nichna, from being humble, is gava, is arrogance. Because arrogance is a contradiction to Achna'ah. One who is arrogant is not humble. So one who has this problem, it's in a way a big obstacle in his way of becoming nichna before anybody. So that is why you will find that in this week's parasha, the Torah forbids chametz on Pesach. What does chametz have to do with anything? The whole story of Yetziat Mitzrayim is tied to this idea called chametz, that once a year for 7 days we cannot eat chametz. Because what is chametz? Chametz is gava, right? Bread rises because of the chametz, because of the leavening agents, and that is forbidden on Pesach. Because the whole idea of Pesach, of Yetziat Mitzrayim, is that we are preparing ourselves for Kabbalat Torah that will happen in Shavuot. We are therefore nichnaim, we therefore humble ourselves before Hashem. Chametz is therefore not allowed. It interferes with the emunah. It will interfere with our achna'ah. And therefore symbolically, there's other reasons why chametz is asur, but symbolically that is one of the ideas mentioned by the commentaries, is because it symbolizes gava. Hashem does not want this during this holiday of emunah, which is what the Pesach is all about. Rekindling the emunah, rekindling that connection that began back then in Yetziat Mitzrayim and continues until today. Chametz disturbs that connection because chametz is gava, whereas we need to have achna'ah in order to have true emunah. In this week's parasha, you will notice an emphasis on giving over all these messages to our children. You should retell the stories to your children. The simple idea behind telling the story to our children is to hand them over the tradition. But also, as we retell the story, what happens to the one telling the story? He himself becomes inspired because he's talking about it. When you talk about something, you yourself become inspired. So the Torah wants the one who's telling, plus the one who's hearing, to be inspired by the events that occurred back then. It should be in our memories continuously. It should be fresh at all times, not something that happened many, many years ago. No, continuously talk about it and be inspired. That is the simple idea of telling over the story, because we want to give over the tradition, plus we want to be inspired. The benefit of reading the biography of a big tzaddik is very similar. When you read the biography of a big tzaddik, you read about his life, how he lived his life, all the details of how he went about doing anything. It is also a great source of inspiration. There are many books on musar, on ethics, but I believe, and I've heard others saying too, that the life of a tzaddik is the greatest book on musar, the greatest source of inspiration. When you see how another Jew lived his life, tremendous source of inspiration. Rabbi Elimelech Milizhensk adds that there's another benefit of telling over the stories. Telling over the miracles that Hashem performed in the past is very important, because a miracle, according to the Kabbalah, is Rachamim. It represents HaKadosh Baruch Hu's compassion or mercy over His people. That is why He performs a miracle. And when we recall or retell the miracles of the past, at that time, it awakens this attribute of mercy in heaven, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be compassionate and merciful once again on us. So it is important to retell the stories, to retell miracles. It is important to make a beracha if you personally experience the miracle. It's important to even give or to make a seudat, hodaya, a meal of sorts to give gratitude to Hashem. When a woman gives birth, she went through a dangerous moment, childbirth. Whether it's a boy or a girl, you make a seudah. HaKadosh who gave us this precious gift, and we have to show our gratitude. And we have to be thankful that the mother and the child are healthy. We show that recognition by saying a gomel, by making seudah and the like. So talking about the miracles is important because we bring about additional miracles, additional rachamim on Am Yisrael. Today we need it more than ever. So it's important to talk about the miracles continuously, not just on Pesach, all the time. Giving over all this information to our children is extremely important. The Torah puts a great emphasis on Chinuch Yiladim, and educating one's children, on the father's duty to teach his child, either personally himself or to send him to a good school, because the survival of the Jewish nation depends on us parents giving over what we know to our children. As the Rabbi of Ponevezh used to say, a child is an orphan when he has no parents. A nation is orphan if it has no children. We don't want our nation to be orphan. Their children don't know what their parents and grandparents do. So that is why it's important for us to give over as much as we can to our children. In the Haggadah of Pesach, we come across 4 types of children. All kinds. There's even one who's very rebellious. He's a Rasha. He's called a Rasha. Doesn't mean he's wicked. He's just a troublemaker. He gives us a hard time. He's rebellious. And because there are children like that, that is why the Haggadah mentions them. And that is what the Torah indirectly speaks about, the various type of responses that a father has to give the child depending on what the child is and how he behaves. What the rabbis tell us from all these children is that what we see is that you cannot ignore anyone, not even the Rasha. For even the Rasha, there is a response to him. Very important point. Don't ignore any child, even if he's rebellious, even if he's lost any interest. There is a response for that kind of a child. There's a way to deal with him too. And what is the response? Even to someone who has shown lack of interest, tell him the miracle too. And continue as much as possible to talk to him about emunah, about the miracles. Maybe one day, all these miracles and all this information will sink in and he will become a believer again. What happens right before they leave Egypt or as they're leaving Egypt? Hashem gives them a few mitzvot, a few commandments. Anybody remember which ones we got as we're leaving Egypt? Korban Pesach. And what else do we have in Parashat Bo? You have the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh, Pidyon Aden, and Tefillin. I'm going to only speak about the Korban Pesach and Tefillin. We don't have that much time. What is the idea behind the Korban Pesach? Pesach, during the time we had a Bet HaMikdash, you would bring a Korban Pesach, a sacrifice, a lamb. What is the idea behind this sacrifice? Rabbis tell us that Am Yisrael was in desperate need of zechuyot when we left Egypt. We were in the lowest level of Tumah, and we didn't have too many merits. We had a few merits, as I mentioned I think last week, that we did not change our names, we did not change our language. That all of those merits helped us too. Helped us stay out from the lowest level of Tumah, the 50th level. But nevertheless, Hashem wanted us to have a very important merit. And He gave us the mitzvah of Korban Pesach. Do you know what Korban Pesach is? When I gave a lecture here for 3.5 years on all the 613 mitzvot, we covered this mitzvah too. And one of the ideas behind Korban Pesach is you're taking the idol of the Egyptian, you're slaughtering it, and you're burning it. You're making a barbecue of it. Yeah, the Torah tells us you can't cook this Korban. You have to make it a barbecue so that all the Egyptians can smell that you are roasting their God. This was a way of publicizing this mitzvah, a way of showing how proud you are to be Jewish and how you're not afraid to publicly slaughter the Egyptian God, which was the Taleh. Kadosh Baruch Hu wants the Jewish people to sever all ties with this Avodah Zarah, which in a sense they were stuck to. And by making this Korban, by bringing this sacrifice, this is a very powerful maaseh to sever their ties with Avodah Zarah and to publicly proclaim their emunah. Another idea that I think that is mentioned, I don't remember where, that Hashem is reminding the Jewish people that you're not like all the other nations, you are above the mazalot. This was the mazal of Taleh. Am Yisrael leaves Egypt during the sign of Aries, during the astrological sign of Aries, mazal Taleh. And by slaughtering this mazal, or this Taleh, Hashem is basically telling us, you're above the mazalot, you have no reason to fear the mazalot. You don't have to relate to the timing of events as the Goyim do. Astrology in itself is a whole big topic, and we're not going to get into it right now, but the one point that I did want to make is that the Torah is very careful with not ascribing too much importance to the timing of events because of astrology. We're not talking about our relationships right now, we're talking about the timing of events. Don't time your events to coincide. Anwar Sadat landed in Israel for the first time, remember? And he didn't step down from the airplane for at least a half an hour. Why? Because his astrologist told him at 1:30 and not at 1, this is when you should step down. There are people who guide all their lives based on astrological time. We don't get involved with that. Even though there is some truth to all these things, but we don't need to. We're above the mazalot and we don't have to be concerned about the timing of events. Nevertheless, in Jewish tradition you will find timing of events. Getting married in the beginning of the month when the moon is filling up and not towards the end of the month, but it doesn't mean you can't. It's just that there are certain times that are more mesugal. There are certain times that are better to write kemia, to write an amulet. There's certain days of the week that are better for certain things, but we don't get overly concerned about these things unless we're aware for sure that this particular day is a no-no. Otherwise, you don't have to be concerned. Let the Goyim be concerned about it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu basically manages our affairs without us having to be concerned about mazalot. So, we bring a Korban Pesach, and guess what happens? There's one Jew who's not invited to the meal. Anybody know who that is? Korban Pesach, we just said it's something very important, but there's one Jew who's not invited. You cannot have him over your seder. Kol ben nechar lo yochal bo. If you read the parasha, you will see Kol ben nechar lo yochal bo. Who is a ben nechar that cannot eat the Korban Pesach? He is known as a meshumad in today's jargon. Today we don't say that this Jew is a ben nechar. We call him a meshumad. Meshumad means that he has left the Jewish people. He's either converted to another religion, completely abandoned every trace of Judaism. It's not necessarily, not exactly an apicorus, but a meshumad. In other words, he's converted. He believes in something. He's not a complete atheist, but he has left the Jewish people completely. Now, why isn't he invited? Because the whole holiday of Pesach, the whole Korban Pesach, is about Emunat Hashem, and he doesn't believe it. Then what is he doing there, taking part of the Korban Pesach? There's some commentaries say, there are some Jews who want to be Jewish only when it comes to food. Yeah, when it comes to food, they want to join us and have a meal with us. But when it comes to praying with us, fasting with us, they don't want to be around. You can't have it that way. Either you're a Jew completely or you're not. You can't just come for the food. That's an additional idea. But the real important point to remember here is that Korban Pesach, the holiday of Pesach, represents Emunah. It is our connection with Hashem, remembering the past, and he does not believe in this. He's therefore not invited. Also because we don't want him sitting at the same table talking to the kids and perhaps cooling their Emunah off. So we don't want such influences around us and around the children. That is why Moshe warns us, be careful. If you detect, maybe you may detect, you may see amongst you some bad root growing amongst you. A description of an individual who is totally against the Torah. If you detect that, get him out of your midst. You don't want him to affect, you don't want it to spread. You want to remove it immediately. But the big question that always bothers me is, how does a Jew become a meshumad? How does a Jew ever think of leaving his people and becoming a Christian? What entered his mind? How does it happen? Wild animals in the wild, animals of prey, have a preference. They don't want to overexert themselves to chase any animal. It's a lot of work. What is their preference? For an animal that is sick or young, even if it's a small elephant, if that small elephant is separated from its mother, even hyenas will go after it. Hyenas, small animals. If that small baby elephant is separated from its mother, animals will go after it. Wild animals prefer the weak and the young, especially if the young have been separated from their mothers. Amalek, we're told, is a very, very dangerous influence out there in the street, out there everywhere. And what's Amalek doing? He weakens the Jews' emunah. He cools the Jews' emunah. And who does he prey on? Especially those who are weak and those who have become detached from their mothers. In other words, those who have become detached from their roots. And that is what happens. If a Jew is detached from his roots, somehow lets go of his regular prayer, regular class of Torah, and he exposes himself to the street, he's exposing himself to Amalek. His emunah will cool off, unfortunately, and he eventually may decide to join some cult. He's separated from his mother. He's weak, but he has a neshama. And the neshama sometimes is hungry. It wants to fill itself up with something. So it looks for spirituality elsewhere, instead of looking in its own backyard. So it is usually the weak, and there are such individuals who are weak, who have become exposed to the forces out there, the forces of Amalek, who tend to cool off one's emunah. And that is very dangerous. And all of this, where does it all begin? From one's home. The Torah put an emphasis in educating one's children because the home is the first place where that education happens. We send our kids to school, but the kids will see some sort of home. They will see parents, hopefully, who behave in a certain way. They will see what the father values, what the mother values, what's important to them. So, just like they say charity begins at home, the chinuch of the yeled begins at home. And if the father is not a good example, then the chances for the child being better than the father are not too strong. There are children who have become better than their parents, but if the father is nothing, then how could he demand anything of his child? How could he give over what he's trying to give over if he himself does not fulfill it? But it's worse than that. What happens when the child comes home one day with questions? As the Torah puts it, Kish alecha machar bincha lemor mazot. If the day tomorrow will come and your son will ask you, what's this, father? Why do we need to do this? I don't know. What kind of an answer will that be to the son? Father is usually admired by a child. He should be. A father who has no answer? And imagine if he pours cold water on it. This is not important anyway. This is old stuff. The child will be impressed by his father, for sure. And what could you expect of such a child? Everything begins at home. If there's a television at home, television is one of the branches of Amalek. It cools off people's emunah. It bombards them with all sorts of garbage. Remember, the head can just handle so much information. And imagine in this head, he's read garbage in the morning from the LA Times. Then he went to the internet and read some more garbage. And then at home in the evening, he actually saw the garbage on the TV. So he's completely surrounding himself with all this garbage and lies and lashon hara and tum'ah. And today the pornography that they have. What can you expect of this individual? How will he grow up? Will he be at Tzaddik? I doubt somebody can read all the sections of the LA Times, spend time on the internet, watch all the ugly and dirty programs on TV and be a real tzaddik. I don't think it's ever possible, because the eyes are seeing such terrible things that it's impossible that he will remain righteous. It's impossible. And we ask later on, what happened to our children? How come they went off the derech? How come they're so misguided? Well, it depends to what you expose them, who their friends are, what they fill their heads with. So television, I've always spoken out against about. It's one thing if you saw TV in the 60s. I even grew up on it. What did we see back then in the 60s? The Three Stooges. If anybody remembers that. So it was funny. And you know how much TV we saw back then? It was only on Sunday, and it was only for a half an hour or an hour at the most. We were busy doing other things. It didn't take up too much of our time. But today, it's a killer. And even the non-Jewish world has spoken out against the effects, the negative effects of television. So if you want to know what cools off a Jew's emunah, there's a lot of things out there in the street or in what's brought into the home that can have a similar effect. The other mitzvah in Parashat Bo is the mitzvah of tefillin. What's the mitzvah of tefillin? Rabbeinu Yonah says the mitzvah of tefillin is given to us at this point because if a Jew fulfills the mitzvah of tefillin, it will help him fulfill all the other mitzvot in the Torah. Tefillin has the power, in Soros Shabbat, to bring a Jew to fulfill the entire Torah. That is why when somebody is doing teshuvah, one of the first mitzvot we ask him to do, you want to do mitzvot? Start with tefillin. It's easy. It only takes 3-4 minutes. You say the Shema Yisrael and you're done with it. You fulfill the mitzvah. That is why you see Chabad, Lubavitch, taking this one mitzvah because it has the power to bring a Jew closer to Hashem, to have him fulfilled all the mitzvot. And it takes a few minutes. That's all. A tremendous, powerful mitzvah and a very valuable mitzvah. The reward is immense for this for this mitzvah. This mitzvah has the power to bring a Jew closer to Hashem, and one of these days he will perform all the mitzvot. There was a woman in Australia who was on the verge of divorcing her husband. They weren't getting along, many problems between them. But one day she hears, they may have been separated, one day she hears that her husband started putting on tefillin. As soon as she heard that, she said, I'm getting back together with him. Because the rabbis tell us that the tefillin also has the power to make a change in the individual. And as soon as she heard that her husband, who she knew to be stubborn or whatever she knew him to be, was willing to make a change in his life, such an important step as putting on tefillin, she says, then maybe he will change his attitude. He will be a different person. She wanted to give it a chance, and I think they stayed together. Mitzvah tefillin is an important mitzvah because it is the actual performance of Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim. When we receive the yoke of heaven, when we say the words Shema Yisrael, all we're doing is saying it. We think about it too, we say it, but the Sfat Emet says that it's not enough to say and to think about it. It's important to do something. Many Jews say, I'm a Jew at heart. I have a good heart. I believe in all this. No. Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim requires ma'asim. Show it, prove it, do something to show that you're accepting the yoke of heaven. Mitzvah tefillin is the ma'aseh of Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim. Shema Yisrael is the dibur, the machshava, the thought, the saying, but you have to do something. And when one does put on tefillin, what is he doing? He's committing himself to do the mitzvot of Hashem. When we tie the straps, we're saying, I'm taking all my thoughts of my head, where the tefillin are, plus my heart, where the hand is, the tefillin of the hand. I'm taking all my thoughts and all my deeds and committing them to the service of Hashem. That is a very powerful message, and we do so by tying it. We just don't talk about it, we actually do something about it. Tefillin also help protect us. The human being, the rabbis tell us, is attracted to that which is material, because he is, to a great extent, material. He's physical. And because we're physical, we're attracted to that which is physical. We have many tavot, we have desires. In order for one to be safeguarded from all these tavot, from all these desires, he needs protection. What are the protections? Tefillin, mezuzah, tzitzit, Torah. These are the protections. As the Rambam brings it down, he actually also mentions that whoever has a mezuzah on his door, puts on tefillin and tzitzit regularly every day, it's almost guaranteed that he will not come to sin, because he has many reminders. Those are the angels that he created from the mitzvot that are continuously protecting him. They will continuously remind him, oh, don't do that. How could you do that? Put on tefillin this morning. You have tzitzit on you. They don't guarantee completely that the person will not sin, but they help remind, they help protect. And we need this constant protection. So the tefillin, as well as the tzitzit, and these are very, very easy mitzvot to fulfill. The tzitzit, you put it behind your shirt, nobody even sees it. You can buy one for $7, $8. But the Yetzer Hara comes and tells you, but it's hot outside, you're going to sweat. All sorts of excuses, so you should not put it on. We need protection. And some of these mitzvot, especially tefillin, is a very important protection. This protection is also important for another reason. Our connection to Kadosh Baruch Hu is called a Brit Ahava. It is a covenant of love. What is a covenant of love? I focus completely on you and on no one else. You're everything for me in my life. When one marries a woman under the chuppah, he says, Arei at mekudeshet li, you are sanctified to me. I elevate this marriage to a very, very high level. And there's no one on that level, except for your wife, except for your husband. Hashem says the same thing with our relationship. This relationship, lo sovel pitzul. It does not tolerate pitzul. In other words, where one is hot-eyed. In other words, that he's focusing here. You cannot have the same love for Torah and for Hashem, and also have that same love for your job, your profession, and the money. It's impossible. You have to think your complete focus on this connection, on this Brit Ahava. And in order to do so, one puts on the tefillin to remind himself that all his thoughts and all his actions are geared for the service of Hashem. The mitzvot that we were given upon leaving Egypt were important because leaving Egypt was not just, oh, we're getting out of this, we're going to have fun now. We're liberated. No. True liberation does not mean that you're free to do anything you want. True liberation requires discipline. It requires guidance, direction. It requires a purpose of life. If a Jew does not have anything to live for, he doesn't understand why he's around for, what the purpose of life is, he will be misguided. He will not end up doing the right thing. So therefore Hashem says, I will give you these mitzvot because you need mitzvot in your life. You cannot live a life without discipline, without having some sort of direction where you're headed. The mitzvot help us in giving us a sense of direction and clarifying to us what the ultimate tachlit and purpose of life is. Just want to finish with the fact that in the same way that our forefathers did a maaseh, they took upon themselves an important act, the Korban Pesach, and that is what gave him a very important merit to leave Egypt. We also need to do something to show that we're proud to be Jewish in order to merit to leave this diaspora. When Hashem tells Moshe, Bo el Paro, he does not tell him, Lech el Paro, go to Paro. He says, come. Why does he tell him come and not go? One should never be discouraged. We're not alone. When Hashem tells Moshe, Bo el Paro, he says, I'm coming with you. You're not alone. We're not alone. Hashem says, I will help you. You want to be a Jew, you want to behave like a Jew, you want to perform Torah mitzvot, don't be afraid of anybody. I will be there for you. I'm coming with you. And that is, I think, a very important message in the beginning of the parasha. It does not only apply to Moshe, it applies to every single Jew. That Hashem reminds us, go out and do what you need to do, and don't be afraid, and help others who have not found their way either. And if you help them, I will help you. There are those who don't want to help themselves. And of course, Hashem will not go out of his way to help them. But the rabbis tell us, whoever wants to become pure, who wants to get closer, wants to be a righteous Jew, he will receive assistance from heaven. It's guaranteed. Guaranteed. We have to turn to him in prayer. We have to show our complete trust in him, and not in our money, and not in Uncle Sam, not in anybody else. And I really hope that very, very soon, all Israelis, hopefully all, but at least the majority, will come to realize that no prime minister can save them of their situation. Not the United States, not anybody else. They only have to turn to Avinu Shebashamayim, to our Father in heaven. He has taken us out from Egypt, and he will take us out from all this misery, from all this galut, and bring us, B'ezrat Hashem, the Mashiach, Tzidkenu v'mirav yamin amen.